A writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the entry of the Commission's decision. We advise that you seek your own independent legal advice to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met. I ask for an approval of today's agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
We have a first and a second. All in favor? Aye. The minutes of the July 8th meeting, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a
Second.
first. We have a second. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Approval of consent agenda. Please note that items on the consent agenda will be voted on at a single time. No individual public hearing will be held, nor will the commission debate these items unless a member of the audience or the commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda. Is there anyone who needs looking to have an additional discussion of the consent agenda items? Anyone in the audience? That being the case, then I will read the consent agenda and we will vote on it at a single time. Mandatory referrals. 2019 M019AB001, a request for the abandonment of right-of-way along alley number 402 from Interstate 65 southward, approximately 380 feet. Easement rights to be retained, requested by Reagan Smith Associates applicant. 2019 M020AB001, a request for the abandonment of the right-of-way and easements along alley number 377 from Barbecue Alley southward to the southwest property line of parcel 09212012100, requested by Kimberly Horn, applicant. Item 2019021AB001, a request for the abandonment of right-of-way and easement along a portion of alley number 691 from alley number 701, southwards to its terminus, requested by Dell and Associates applicant. Parking regulations. Item D, authorize removal of parking meters on 19th Avenue from Edge Hill to Scarrett on west side and authorize installation of bus parking signs on the east side of 19th Avenue South from the driveway at University School to Edge Hill, requested by the University School of Nashville. Item E, authorize a passenger loading zone on Ewing Avenue from Middleton to Fogg Street from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., requested by Ewing Investments. Item F, authorize valet parking in front of 1200 2nd Avenue North from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Friday through Sunday, requested by Omega Parking. Item G, authorize a valet zone at 200 4th Avenue South, requested by Highwoods Property. Item H, authorize installation of no parking signs on Bellwood on north side of Bellwood from 31st Avenue North to 240 feet west of 31st Avenue North, requested by Dell and Associates. Traffic regulations. Item I, reduce the speed limit from 30 to 25 miles per hour on the following streets between 21st Avenue South and Belmont Boulevard, requested by Metro Public Works. Sweetbriar Avenue, Beechwood Avenue, Linden Avenue, and Ashwood Avenue. Item J, reduce the speed limit from 30 to 25 miles per hour on the following streets between Sweetbriar Avenue and Ashwood Avenue, requested by Metro Public Works. Hawthorne Place, Altura Place, and Oakland Avenue. Item K, reduce the speed limit on Old Burkett Road from 30 miles per hour to 20 miles per hour, requested by Metro Public Works. Item L, authorize an all-way stop at Eastland Avenue and Rosebank Avenue, requested by Councilmember Withers. Item N, modify the two-way stop to all-way stop at 49th Avenue and Tennessee Avenue, requested by Councilmember Roberts. Item N, authorize a stop sign on River Rouge Court at River Rouge Drive, requested by Metro Public Works. Item P, authorize all-way stop at Michigan Avenue and 48th Avenue North, requested by Councilmember Roberts. And item Q, authorize speed limit reduction from 30 to 25 miles per hour on Sophie Drive and Maxwell Place, requested by Metro Public Works. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Council Lady Roberts, I sent an email, I don't know if you caught that, but item P, my fault, that should read Michigan at 49th.
Oh,
She would prefer they always stop at 49th Avenue.
okay. All right.
So is that, we need, if we move for approval with that,
Move for an amendment?
Yes, just note that it needs to say Michigan and 49th.
I move for approval, with noting that item P needs to say Michigan Avenue and 49th Avenue North.
Okay, we have a first. Is there a
Second.
second? We have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Consent agenda has been approved. Thank you. Mr. Billy Fields, thank you for coming this afternoon.
I'm glad to be here. Mr. Knopf had asked that I would give you a report on where we are on SUMDs, scooters. So I'll bring you a report from the Transportation Licensing Commission today. We have begun our 100-day journey to develop an RFP to allow up to 3 companies to operate scooters in metropolitan government. The committee has been formed, including one of your members as a representative, to develop an RFP. A subcommittee is also working on that as well. It's certainly a challenge that we have, but we're working on that. With respect to the scooters themselves, they're continuing to operate under the authority of an ordinance the Metropolitan Council passed, 1658, which had some specific things they had asked. And then gave the commission authority to develop additional rules and regulations. Last week, week before last, the commission passed a series of regulations which will keep them under regulatory authority until the RFP is in effect, as well as beyond. So scooters are, we're continuing to work. There are half the number of scooters on the street today. There cannot be any more at the present time, about 2,000. I think 2,050 would be the exact total. So that's kind of where we are on scooters in a nutshell. But I'd be happy to answer any questions y'all may have.
Commissioners.
I have a question. Do I need to speak into this? Yes. I do? Okay. So, is there any regulation for people that are driving down Hillsborough Road? I mean, I'm talking like past One Boulevard, where there's not even a room for a sidewalk, real narrow stuff.
At the present time, the vehicles such as that would be treated just like a bicycle. So they have right to the road, and people should give them 3 feet 3 feet space going around them. So they have the right to be out there.
Even if there's not a sidewalk or anything?
Well, they shouldn't be on the sidewalk anyway. So they
Okay,
they either should be on a bike route or a regular street.
So I just need a little clarification from the emails I get. So what is considered a what streets or kinds of streets are they not allowed on?
At the present time, there are no specific streets that they can't be on. Any street that a bicycle can be on. Now, there are some streets that are more in the downtown area that are some slow zones that have just been created. So that's one of the things the commission over the next several months will be looking at. Are there certain areas that scooters maybe either need to operate in differently than they are able to operate at the present time?
So if we have a recommendation that they not be way outside of the core, is the subcommittee that would make that recommendation to?
Probably not the subcommittee, but certainly the commission. You could
Okay.
make a recommendation to the Transportation Licensing Commission,
Okay.
and they can take that up.
Thank you.
Will they be making changes to the existing legislation that regulates the scooters?
Well, the only regulation that we have at the present time is it's 1262. Basically, 1658 deleted 1262 and almost all its parts, with the exception, I think, of the definitions, and then replaced it with 2 or 3 pages of legislation. Then called upon the commission, the Transportation Licensing Commission, to draft new emergency regulations that would then regulate them up to the RFP and beyond. So the commission last week more or less readopted all of the ordinance that was there previously, as well as some additional changes. So basically where they're operating is exactly the way they were. There's a few differences, but they're very subtle differences for the most part, in addition to the recommendations that the Metro Council passed along to us.
Okay, so the enforcement aspect for law enforcement, that would fall under a normal TCA or Metro Code with regards to bicycles or anything else.
Correct.
And what is that number again? I guess
Well, the ordinance number, it would be 1260. I'm sorry, the bill that passed is 2019-1658. The ordinance in the Code of Law would be 1262.
Chapter 12.
okay.
But we do have a bill pending next week on a total ban. That's Steve Glover's bill.
I don't recall that bill number, but
1707.
Councilman Hager is correct. There's a bill next week that would actually do away with scooters. It would repeal 1262 and anything that goes with it.
It's BL 2019-1707.
1707.
And in 1262, it clearly identifies and explains that they're responsible for all the laws on the roadway, just as a bicycle would be, so that, okay.
Yep,
At
they're
this point, 1262 was the most of the content of 1262 that was formerly in the code itself was vacated by BL 2019-1658, and the TLC was directed to enact regulations. So the TLC did that last week and readopted, for lack of a better word, the guts of Chapter 1262, like as Billy said, with a few tweaks in addition.
Okay.
She may be around me too much because I said that's what I described. The guts of it's still there, so I think there's a little bit of a couple of amendments that we're going to be working with legal to put in, and then as soon as we do, we'll be putting that on our website and distributing it to all the commanders.
Awesome.
Yes, ma'am.
Regarding the scooters, I know that the corrals have been created downtown, but they're still parking on the sidewalks. So what's the repercussion for that?
Well, at the present time, again, part of the changes is we have reduced the time for basically if there's an ADA problem, we're trying to respond immediately to correct any ADA problems. The repercussions are they can be fined. The companies themselves can be fined. The riders can be cited as well if they're not properly using it. But one of the things that we're doing is a cost study to determine how would be the best way to move forward with respect to enforcement, whether it's working with the police department or a different kind of an employee. But we recognize that scooter companies are going to need to pay their way, so we'll be introducing some ideas and enforcement, I think, in the next month or so, to assuming that scooters go forward to be able to do a better job downtown, because it is a challenge. We know that. But if you complain today, if you call our officer, if you go through the Hub Nashville, which works very well, we immediately contact the companies. We expect them to be moved immediately. We've had good results with the companies. We continue to have problems with users who just drop them wherever they might choose to drop them.
Can you remind me how much scooter companies are paying?
Scooter company, present time, when they came in, there was a $500 company application fee, and there's a $35 per scooter fee. This year we've collected $145,500.
Are they paying anything for the corrals?
They have not yet. In the new ordinance, they're going to be what was passed by the council requires them to pay up to $10,000 each for any signage, and I think that may actually include the corral, at least parts of it, because of the signage we're putting on the streets themselves. My lawyer's saying, but anyway, they would be the signage around the corrals that don't exist yet, but they would at least be able to show where they are and that sort of thing. But we're working on that as well.
Yeah, I think that the commission, the Transportation Licensing Commission, voted for there to be a cost study done to justify an increase of the annual fee, the permit fee that the scooter companies pay, and so that they could take into account other costs like the construction of the corrals and more enforcement. And then would increase that fee so that that fee could be justified as being based upon actual costs to Metro that Metro needs to be reimbursed for incurring.
I do have to admit, at my 31st year working for metropolitan government, I did not anticipate spending 60 or 70% of my time working on scooters, nor 50% of another staff member and 20% of another, and part of the directors. It's been so far. It's been very interesting looking at all the hands that are touching this, not because they want to, but because they're required to. And none of it would count police because it's calculated differently, but the police are touching it every day, as are the emergency medical people.
Now, part of the licensing, is there any requirement from the companies to do background checks on employees? What I'm getting at is those who go around at night and pick these scooters up, is there any background check or is there anything provided to Metro with regards to who's picking these scooters up?
No, they're outside any authority we have. They're not like the other vehicles for hire that we regulate and do background checks on.
So, question, so do you know what your costs are associated? You mentioned the revenue you collected, but do you have any sense of what the costs are associated with this program?
We don't have the final numbers, but I mean, in general, I can describe in Public Works, for instance, you're talking about, again, by the time you calculate my time, an office assistant's time, traffic engineer's time, traffic engineer in training's time, the director of the department, there's a really large ripple effect of just day-to-day work that we're having to do for scooters. There's been a reasonably high cost or a lot of hours in Metro Legal. IT is probably at least a person, maybe a person and a half, and that will continue. Some of these are more, I don't want to call them startup, but some of them are startup, but some are going to be ongoing. I don't see that unless I just physically hire another person in my office to do what I'm doing, somebody's going to have to deal with like what I'm doing right now. So whether it's a public thing or whether it's meeting with the companies themselves.
Okay. So the goal is to try to price the fees based on what the actual costs are.
I fully anticipate them covering it.
Anticipated
right.
additional costs of additional enforcement as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to say thank you for everything you're doing. You walked into chaos, with this. They've really done well. So thank you on behalf of Nashville.
And besides the scooters, what else are you regulating?
We're responsible for taxi cabs. We're responsible for other vehicles for hire, which would include limousines, black cars, and those sort of things. We regulate the booting services. We regulate towing services. We regulate the pedal carriages, and we don't do petty cabs at the present time, but we do petty cabs.
Low-speed vehicles. Low-speed
Low-speed
like
vehicles,
golf carts,
the
okay.
horse and carriages. And fortunately, I would say this gives me an opportunity to publicly say thank you to your staff for working with us, because there are complicated processes where there are some shared responsibilities, but you actually have some specific authority over some of the things that we do, and they've responded very well, and we appreciate that.
Okay. Because I think there's some ongoing concerns about the boundaries of some of these vehicles, about where they've been seen versus where they're supposed to be.
We do have established on the low-speed vehicles or golf carts, as most people would describe them. We do have a boundary, which is basically the inner loop. And it's actually even shrunk inside that. The horse and carriages typically are going to be staying in the downtown area, just from a standpoint, unless they've asked for special permission to be other places. The pedal taverns themselves typically work in the Gulch, the downtown area, and they'll get over up and down Music Row. The Commission does have authority to do more limiting, and that may be one of the things that we have. One of the issues that we see, and you all know, for instance, we had a vehicle that, for lack of a better term, came to be licensed a month or two ago, which is a military transport vehicle. Because of its weight, the Commission and the metropolitan government does not have the authority to regulate it, because we can regulate a vehicle that goes up to 10,000 pounds. Those vehicles are about 20,000 pounds. there are actually some state laws that prohibit us to going above 15 passengers, which is very frustrating in some cases and a relief in another because I don't have to think about them. But the reality is somebody needs to think about them. But we're bound by the state laws that prohibits us from doing it, very much like Uber and Lyft.
Okay.
Is there any discussion about time constraints? Because I know a lot of the pedal taverns are running around downtown at rush hour traffic.
They should not be. They should not be on the streets in the morning between 7 and 9 and between 4 and 6. If they are, again, it's a violation of the commission's rules. And I know the police officer knows it, but for the sake of the commission, you can write citations on our rules just as well because they have the same effect as a law with respect to writing citations.
I have one more scooter question. Has anyone thought about limiting down to the inner loop?
Not specifically, but that is a conversation that's ongoing about where they do operate. Part of the issue that we have, the goal of the scooters is a little different than some of the other things that we have. The goal, the basic part of a scooter is to try to be the first and last mile for transportation. So we want to believe that it's a transportation issue and not a transportainment issue. Transportainment is very important to the city, and we know that, but we also know that being able to get somebody from a bus stop to their home is very important. So every time we can have somebody that's going to work in the morning, coming home, and that we're taking one car off the street, or at least that's what we want to believe. And so we're continuing to work that direction. I think the challenge then comes in when the people, they'd say that after you use a scooter about 8 times, you're really good and you're proficient and you don't have many accidents. But the first 8 times, apparently there's a big learning curve. I haven't ridden on one because I'm old. But we're going to continue working with the companies. We're going to continue working with the public, looking for ways to better educate the drivers and the riders. In fact, last week at our committee meeting, that was one of the big things as part of the RFP is we want the companies to show us how we can better educate and how we can have better outcomes in terms of fewer accidents, fewer violations. Because we have a whole lot more violations than we do accidents, fortunately.
One final question. How do you work with the universities, TSU, Belmont, Vanderbilt, et cetera? Because my sense is there's probably decent scooter traffic, but they're going from private property to public property pretty quickly.
Well, we work very well with Vanderbilt so far. The others we've not for any particular reason other than we haven't met with them. I understand some have actually banned the scooters from being on campus altogether. Vanderbilt, as you know, is because I think they've appeared and made their explanation. They're reworking their downtown or their campus in terms of the vehicular traffic through those centers. So they're looking for other ways to encourage bicycles and so forth. We have created a couple of no-ride zones on campus at their request. To around the hospital, for instance, and some other areas to make sure that people can safely traverse in and around those areas. I think there could be more, but we certainly will work with, because it is Davidson County, we're responsible for the entire county. Even if it's on private property, they still have to abide by the rules that we have.
Okay.
One of the TLC commissioners works for TSU, doesn't she, Ms. Powell?
Actually works at Meharry.
Oh, she works at Meharry.
Okay.
So we continue. We're very open. Our commission, like y'all, we work with folks when they want to work through problems. We'll certainly work with them to improve their experiences that they have.
I did see someone on a scooter go right up to the trailhead at Radnor Lake and leave the scooter, which I thought was just funny. I mean, at least they weren't on the trailhead. But
Scooters should
guess
not.
they didn't want to walk.
I don't regulate the state trails, but the greenways they're not to be on, and on non-vehicular streets in Metro Parks.
Yeah, not on any parks property.
Right.
Okay. All right. Okay, are there any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Fields, for your illuminating discussion today.
Anytime we can help. Thank you for all that y'all do for the city. We appreciate you.
All right, you're welcome. All right, commissioners, do y'all have any other items, discussion? Not?
I make a motion to adjourn.
We are adjourned.
I have a question regarding the items on the District 20 for stop signs on 49th Street. Were those on a consent agenda?
Yes.
And the third item was listed on the agenda as 48th,
It-
and Illinois, that should be 49th in Illinois.
That's the one we changed.
That's the one we changed.
That was
from-
corrected,
We
yes,
just
sir.
changed that.
We did Michigan Avenue.
We did Michigan in 49.
We did Michigan in 49.
Yeah, we got both 49s.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you all.